So we're picking up where we left off with R6 through R8. So we are factoring here. If I have two terms, how do I factor? Take out the GCF. So what's my GCF between 6z squared and 42z? What would I need to divide by both of these? 6z, awesome. So when we factor it, that comes to the outside. And then I'm just dividing. So 6 divided by 6 would be 1. Z squared divided by z would just be z. And what's negative 42z divided by 6z? Negative 7. So that would be answer choice C. So anytime you only have two terms, you always want to check and see if you have a GCF. Take out the GCF. Same thing with 23. We would take out the GCF. Let's look at 24. What are two factors of 4 that add to 5? 4 and 1. Are they both positive? Yep. So we would write this as z plus 4 and z plus 1. So that would be answer choice D. 25, 26 are the same. Just normal factoring. Find your two factors of the last term that add to the middle. Let's look at 27. How would I factor 27? So we have a number in front of the squared term, so we can't just find our two factors of the last that add to the middle. I could multiply the first times the last, but that would be 9 times 648. I would divide all of it by 9. So always, if you have a number in front of your squared term, check and see if you have a GCF. So the first thing we want to do is take out the GCF. And the GCF is 9. So I'm dividing everything by 9. So that 9 just goes on the outside. I'm left with v squared plus v. Then I need to do 648 divided by 9. Yes. So it goes into 64 7 times. So it would be 72. Now from here, we can just factor it normally. What are two factors of negative 72 that add to 1? Perfect. 9 and 8. Which one is positive? The 9. So the 8 has to be negative. So it would be v plus 9 and v minus 8, and then that 9 that we took out in the beginning just stays on the outside. So here, this would match answer choice C. For questions like these, be super careful with your signs because all of your answer choices are pretty much the same numbers, just the sign is what's different. So just be careful when choosing your answer choice. Be very, very careful with the signs. Right, let's look at 28. So 28, I have a number in front of my squared term. Do I have a GCF that I could take out?
No.
No. So what do I do to factor?
Factor 1. Divide by 1.
But that wouldn't change the question. We multiply the first times the last. Anytime you have a number out front in front of the x squared, multiply the first times the last. If you can't, take out a GCF. Check for a GCF first. If you don't have one, then multiply the first times the last. So I get 12. What are two factors of 12 that add to negative 13? Awesome, negative 12 and negative 1. So I would write it as x minus 12 and x minus 1. Now here's a step that a lot of people always forget. What do I have to do next? Perfect. If we start by multiplying that 4, we have to remember to go back in and divide 4. So this would be x minus 3. What happens if it doesn't divide and I can't simplify it? Put it in front of the x. Awesome. So 4x minus 1. So that would match answer choice A. So anytime you start by multiplying, you have to remember to go back in and divide. What would we do first for 29? Perfect. Divide everything. Well, is 60 divisible by 8? What else could we divide everything by? 4. My GCF would be 4. Just make sure if you are taking out a GCF that it goes into all 3 numbers. So take out the GCF first here. All right, let's look at 30. What's special about 30? This would be the difference of 2 squares. So when we have 2 perfect squares, we break it down into a plus b and a minus b. Well, what 2 numbers multiply to give me 16? 4 and 4. So that would go in my first spot. What 2 terms multiply and give me m squared? M and m. So this would be 4 plus m and 4 minus m. So that would match answer choice. There we go. Yes. Just keep it in the same order that it gives it to you in. So like our first term would be 4. That would come first. Your answer choices are going to match. But it's important that like the m, since that's second, that gets the plus and the minus. So it kind of does match. All right, let's look at 31. Do I have 2 factors of 169 that add to negative 26? Look at our answer choices. Use that to help you. What do you think our 2 numbers are going to be? 13. Negative 13 and negative 13. So I would write h minus 13 times h minus 13. Now this is not an answer choice, but how else could I write this? If I have 2 h minus 13s. H minus 13 squared. So that would be answer choice A. So use your answer choices to help you. If you can't think of factors, most likely the answer choice is going to give you a hint on what your factors may be. All right, let's look at 32. How do I factor when I have 4 terms? We factor by grouping. Bless you. So we group the first 2 and group the second 2. And we just take out the GCF of each group. Bless you. What's my GCF in the first group? 2y squared. Perfect. So I take out the 2y squared. When I divide both of these by 2y squared, what am I left with? Y minus what? 4. Perfect. Now we do the same thing in my second group. What's the GCF in the second group? 5. So I'm going to take out a 5. And then I'm left with y minus 4. Now our inside parentheses have to be the same thing in order for us to factor by grouping. So always just make sure that what you took out is the same. Now what do you think goes into my first set of parentheses? Two y squared plus 5. We take what's on the outsides, and what goes into my second group? Y minus 4. Awesome. So what's on the insides goes into 1, and then what's on the outsides goes into your other group. So how would I factor 33? Group them. We have 4 terms here, so group the first 2, group the second 2. Let's take a look at 34. Here, we're solving because it has an equal to 0. So I'm not just factoring. I have to go all the way through and solve. So we are solving. How would I solve this? What could I do first? So if I have an x squared and an x and a number, here you would want to factor. But if we just have an x squared and a number that's equal to 0, if we don't have that solo x there, we want to get the x all by itself. So just solve for x. So how can I get that z here all by itself? Add the 49. So our goal is to get the z all by itself. So I have z squared is equal to 49. Now what would I do next? Square root both sides. So what does z equal? Awesome, plus or minus 7. Don't forget, whenever you take the square root of both sides, you need the plus or minus. So z is equal to positive 7 and negative 7. So that would be answer choice A. All right, so let's look at the next page. Here we're solving. So whenever we solve, we just want to get the variable all by itself. So for 35, what would I need to do to solve? Trying to get perfect. Trying to get z all by itself, so we want to add 7 to move it to the other side. What is negative 18 plus 7? Negative 11. Perfect. So that would be D. Bless you. All right, let's look at 36. Here we're doing the same thing. We need to get y all by itself. So what would I need to do? Minus 3/4 to move it to the other side. Since 3/4 is being added to the y, we do the opposite and subtract to move it. So I have y is equal to negative 2 over 7 minus 3/4. Fractions, our favorite. How do I subtract fractions? What do I need? A common denominator. So what can I multiply to make a common denominator? Yeah, I can multiply the first fraction by 4 to make it negative 8 over 28. And then I'll multiply the second one by 7 to make it negative 21 over 28. And then we just combine the tops. What's negative 8 minus 21? Negative 29 over 28. So that would be answer choice C. 38, what would I need to do to solve?
Since it's like division, that we have to multiply the two numbers.
Perfect. Since k is being divided by negative 9, I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 9. So k is equal to what? Negative 63. So that would be answer choice C. Again, just for like the other questions, you guys can always use your answer choices to help you. Think about all of these numbers. If you plugged in 16 into k, 16 divided by negative 9 is not 7. So look at your answer choices to help you. All right, 39 is the same. 40 is just a little bit different, but we're solving for h. What would I need to do to solve for h? If h is being multiplied by 6 pi, divide 6 pi on both sides. So h is equal to 54 divided by 6 is what? 9. And then the pi's just cancel. Pi divided by pi just goes away. So h is equal to 9. B. All right, let's look at 42. What should I do first for 42? Combine like terms. So I have two like terms here. They're on the same side, so I just add them together. So negative 9n plus 16n would be what? 7n. Now we're solving for n, so we just want to get n all by itself. So what should I do next? Subtract 4. So negative 66 minus 4 would be negative 70. And then divide by 7. So what does n equal? Negative 10. So answer choice C. All right, let's look at 43. A couple different ways we can solve this. What could I do first?
Distribute.
I could distribute. What else could I have done instead of distributing?
Divided.
I could have just divided everything by 3. It'll cancel out, and then we'd get equal to 7. But we can distribute. Either way will work. So 3 divided by negative 5y would be negative 15y, and 3 times 2 would be 6. Equals 21. What should I do next? Subtract 6. We want to get the y all by itself, so we're undoing everything around it. So subtract 6. We get negative 15y is equal to 15. And then what do I do? Divide by negative 15. So y is equal to? Negative 1. Answer choice A. For 44, we do the same thing, just distribute before you start combining your like terms. Be careful with the second part when you distribute. Remember, you're distributing the negative 4, not just the 4. So that negative 4 is what gets multiplied to the negative 2 and the b. (45) is similar. It just kind of asks the question a little bit differently. It says determine whether each equation has one solution, no solution, or two solutions. We can just find out what our solution is. What do I need to do to solve? Solving for C. So what should I do first? I can add the 20. So it ends up canceling out. So then I have 4c is equal to 4c. Then what can I do? Divide by 4. So I get c is equal to c. What do you think my answer is? Well, did I get c is equal to a number? Does c equal negative 4? No, so it's not A. Does c equal 0? Nope, so it's not D. If c is equal to c, what do you think? Infinitely many solutions. So it would be no solution if we had something like 0 is equal to 6. Something that's not equal, something that's not true, then it would be no solution. But if you get like x is equal to x or 0 is equal to 0, this would be infinitely many solutions. We're going to do a couple more and then we're going to be done for the day. So looking at 46. So I'm solving the system of linear equations. When we have a system of equations, it means we're going to have more than one equation with more than one variable. We can either solve with elimination or substitution. So how do you think I can solve 46? What do you want to do first? We can do elimination. Do I have a variable that will cancel out? The negative x and x. So I'm just going to add all of my terms together. What is y plus y?
2y.
2y. Awesome. A lot of people made that mistake on the last test too. They thought that y plus y canceled, but it has to be a positive and a negative. So if we have a negative x plus x, that cancels. And then 30 plus 6 would be 36. So you can only combine like terms. Now we're solving for y. So divide both sides by 2. What does y equal? Not plus or minus, just 18. We're just dividing by 2, so y is equal to 18. Which of my answer choices says that y is equal to 18? A. I don't even need to keep going. If you wanted to, plug it back in. It'll make sense for the x. You'll get 12 for x. But if you're short on time and you just find one of them and you're confident in your answer, just pick that one. I would suggest plugging it in to find your x just to be super sure that that's your answer choice. Any questions here?